Welcome, everybody, to Stewards of the Sacred Self-Leadership, Ritual, and Purpose in a Time of Psychedelic Expansion. I am your host and the creator of this event, Natasha Pelgrim, and today I'm thrilled to present to you one of the amazing elders in my life and that I've known for many, many years, Dr. Regina Hess. Welcome, Regina. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Natasha, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, and I've already learned so much from you, and I'm so impressed by everything you dream forth. But for those who might not know you, I of course going to share your bio, and I'm going to read it because there is so much to share. But today's topic is rising in deep intimacy, world as a lover, stewardship for a new earth. So I feel that this title there, we can go in so many beautiful directions already. But let me share about Dr. Regina Hess. She lives in the Netherlands in Den Haag and works globally. She is a clinical psychologist from Germany and holds a joint Ph.D. in transpersonal psychology. She is a body-centered Gestalt psychotherapist, a creative therapist, a transpersonal psychotherapist, and supervisor. Regina has a board of experience in humanitarian fieldwork and research on global health issues. She is the founder and director of ASE World Forum. Ancient wisdom meets modern science. She's a specialist in working on transformation of pre and prenatal, individual, and collective transgenerational, transcultural trauma and integration of the therapeutic shamanic use of altered states of consciousness, with a specific focus on integrating deep ecology, deep feminine principles, including sacred intimacy, sexuality, and women's councils. Regina is a faculty at the international universities at the LF Trust in the UK, and she's also a board of directors of Eurotas Global Transpersonal Network and the International Transpersonal Association, as she's involved in the Swiss Medical Society for Psycholytic Therapy and the Mind Foundation. Regina recently founded a global initiative called Birthing an Ancient Future, Temple of the People's Multidisciplinary Psychedelic Council from all the directions, all the relations, and bridging in ancient traditions in modern psychedelic science, art, and nature immersion. And in 2023 of June, we had the first event, and it was absolutely beautiful. And from that on, beautiful ceremonies you've also been creating. But so welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
So I would love to immediately actually go into a topic, and it's maybe a word that not everybody is aware of, which is the three core pillars for the re-sacralization of all. So maybe you can speak and lean into this topic as it weaves in also the topic of this event and us coming together.
Yes, thank you very much for this prompt, let's say. I think probably I need to give a little bit of a context that probably the audience can resonate more strongly. And just very briefly, I'm born in Germany as a war grandchild after the Second World War. And my whole life is about working on individual collective trauma transformation healing. Now, being a medicine elder, I have reached a point where I feel probably I came with so much love that I'm able to look at such things like the Holocaust. And of course, not in a causal, monocausal understanding, but like, yeah, like a feeling. Yeah. And probably that can be a starting point even to discuss deeper, more like the contextual framework that I would like to bring today. So kind of, this is very much, of course, a bodhisattva understanding potentially, coming with a lot of compassion to be able to transcend suffering, probably, yeah. On one level, we could make a correlation with this kind of understanding, but it's really like lived through experience. So it's not like talking about theoretical spiritual traditions, frameworks, etc., but really lived through. And like 30 years being a clinician, trauma expert, but always expanded the mainstream a framework with a spirituality, with art, with nature, etc. Beyond psychedelics. So psychedelics is just one way of expanding our understanding. So what I would like to share after these 30 years of trauma work, I feel I have come to a place where probably this is like a metaphor that I would like to transmit to the audience is like, and I have read certain accounts also now from psychedelic research. When we come to a place where we are able to face our individual challenges that we experienced in our lives, biographical, and then of course expanding to our parents, grandparents, ancestors, where psychedelics can help greatly, potentially. Yeah. It can be the opening of the heart, yeah, the opening of the heart that we don't need to run away anymore from our pain. Unconsciously, basically, we run away from our pain. That psychologically explained through defense mechanisms, yeah, things that we avoid things that we project in a certain way. Versus when we can look at the pain or hold the pain with compassion, with love, then it can transform it and we can become free from our past experiences to some extent at least. I always say, but still we are humans and we have scars and scratches, yeah. But for me at the moment, this is like the core of my teaching is kind of coming from that place to say, on the one hand, when we, on an adult level become stable enough to be able to look back in our past experiences without getting lost in it, without getting lost in details, without needing to run away from it, then we are able to face it. And of course, psychedelic substances potentially can support that process. And then we reach a point which is in all spiritual traditions described as freedom, like transcendence, transformation, and to become free from our pain from the past, to become free from our patterns of blockages that we took on from our parents and grandparents. Nobody's free of that. So that's the one thing. And out of this, only in my understanding, in my take on, then naturally our real gifts and talents emerge. So it's not either or. It's not like looking at trauma, da 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 da, or only looking at, let's say, empowerment, positive psychology. For me, it is a process that is interwoven like a DNA. It is a dance of being and knowing. And I feel this is different to many other teachings, probably, to say wait a minute, it's a dance. It's not either or. As much as we need to learn to transform our challenging experiences that we run away from, as much then naturally evaporates our true self. And more we are becoming our true self, but not either or. If I only focus on, that's my critique also of positive psychology, empowerment, things like that, or just isolated aspects, that then I'm not able to weave together my complex being of things, of experiences, my ancestors, where I come from, and potentially what I transmit for the future. So that's kind of, I feel like these 30 years of work now gets condensed in this very strong one metaphor that it is actually both. And of course, that's not new, but like more clear to say, wait a minute, it's both, and we need to work on both kind of at the same time. The more I can hold my pain and transform it, the more naturally my true self emanates. And it's then the core pillars that I suggested to discuss today. So first step is the body. First step is somatics, because all our experiences are stored in our body. So that's kind of, the vessel. We can explain it on a neurophysiological level, neuroscientific level. I like very much, this is the bridge also between indigenous and modern science, to say, okay, shamanic traditions always teach we need to look 7 generations backwards and forwards, and we can show this with neuroscience. All experiences are stored in the body, and very severe collective experiences like war, disaster, even can potentially lead to changes on the DNA. So epigenetics here again comes in very importantly to show the impact of disaster that takes quite some time to be transformed, and at the same time through that process of transforming suffering to become more true who we really are. And I would say this is then the spiritual awakening process, but going hand in hand with the psychological, emotional, physical body experience. It needs the integration in mainstream science. It needs the integration in my understanding of an ancestral perspective. Otherwise, we are just too egocentric and too individualized. This is the high price of modern society. Modern societies here in the world right now, all indigenous knowledge, also in Europe, know and refer to ancestor healing. And then, of course, on the other hand, in dreaming into the future to care for the future generations that we will not experience, and what can we leave, and how can we support the future generations. So that's the ancestral perspective. And then, of course, the ecological perspective. We are living here on Earth, so-called children of the Earth, and in the modern times we have destroyed the Earth by over individualization, I would say, over competition, and also over specialization, that we so much specialized, so much zoomed in into specific fields that we lost the overview and the bigger picture. And I'm very much a person, rather, my calling is rather to bring the bigger picture together and bring bits and pieces together. So the third level is connectedness with nature, which is there. It's only that we need to restore to allow it. And in that way, this is the little title that I gave to my talk today, resacralization. Or yeah, it's not like we don't need to invent the wheel. Everything is interconnected. We can show this on a physical, biological, scientific level, on an indigenous level, on a psychological level. It's only we need to allow to feel it. And when we allow to feel it, we usually feel both painful experiences, and beautiful, empowering experiences. And so for me, it is like this is the threshold, the crossroads where we stand. Also the potential that I see of psychedelics and psychedelic science, and probably the power that I can bring to the table, or my calling of this life, is to exactly bring this dance together of these two, of let's say pain and suffering and ecstasy and catharsis. And then I can just bring it to really very universal metaphors, like birth, death, rebirth processes, that all awakening processes, all healing processes are like that, have a certain structure, have a certain rhythm, and basically that every birth is a death and every death is a birth at the same time. So it's like this dance of being and knowing, what probably today I would like to emphasize.
Yeah. Do you feel that we are in right now in this this death and birth window in our collective, and how do you see that transition in the work that you're doing? Do you witness that is happening in the individual experience, but maybe also in the collective experience?
What I see, and I think that's what helped me also to bring it more clearly now, also for our talk today. I see very much a split, like, okay, people are ready to look at their trauma, whatever, and ancestral trauma, and then people only want to look at positive psychology or empowerment. I always say, hey, it's like two sides of a coin. We need to do both. We need to do also the dirty laundry of things that we try to downplay, to hide, our own shadows, shadow work, etc. So it's more like really finding the maturity I feel that we need individually and collectively as modern societies, is like the balance of both. And that's what I call the stewardship for a new earth. We don't need to invent the earth, we don't need to invent the humans, etc. But we need to invent a new harmony, yeah, or whatever will happen then. So what I see really, and I have like a lot of young people also coming and joining and asking for help. Also quite a lot of young couples, and seeking conscious lifestyle, conscious family planning, etc. And I see this phenomenon as a phenomenon of modern societies, the split between so-called good and bad experiences, and only seeking ecstasy. That would be also like, I mean, I work quite long also with sexuality, intimacy in a very profound, very deep, protected way. versus urban tantra, so and so waves, renaissances, where we only want to look at pleasure, ecstasy, but not in connection with all our experiences, and then the other way around, getting lost in trauma and victimhood, and not finding the way in to say, okay, how can I integrate that with my gifts and talents? So I feel this is where we stand. I feel this is the threshold that still we are in the midst of bringing these two sides of the coin together. I feel this is really the also the wound point, the pain point. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Speaking about sexuality and intimacy, would you mind speaking a little bit into that sacred sexuality, that deep intimacy, as you, from your perspective, and what that also, what is it? Because maybe some people have read it, maybe they understand it, and maybe even what's it not? What isn't it? You know? Yeah.
Only of course coming from the framework that I try to explicate right now. So sacred sexuality comes for me from an embodied somatic perspective. First step is like really being able to connect with our bodies, being able to hold our experiences, both the challenging and the amazing experiences. And that the second step is like developing a heart connection, a stable heart connection from a more mature adult place. Otherwise, the tendency of all of us is that we go into regression, that we act out things, that we manipulate, etc., more on a childlike level or whatever manipulations that we learned as children, basically. So sacred sexuality for me is also really stabilizing the adult self perspective through the body, through a heart practice. And then on top of it, psychedelics might help to support like catalyzing experiences that we are working towards to. But I always say that needs to have clear other practices. Like meditation for me is like absolute important in whatever way that might suitable for people. That can be different way, does not need to be only sitting meditation, can be walking meditation, whatever really helps to really connect with yourself and the world around you at large. And then sexuality is one part in the whole thing, but I always say sexuality for me is advanced level. First, we need to have a basic connection with our body, basic understanding of our experiences. Then second step, have a more stable, mature heart connection. And then only much later, from that place, could be the development and experience of sacred sexuality as really experience of becoming one, of a birth and death experience. Um, yeah, I always say for me that's rather advanced level, and there's not a quick fix and not a quick solution. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel and see that, for example, bring in and the title, the world as a lover, and what that means in its essence? And one of the things that I've learned from one of my teachers when she was sharing about how you pray and how what prayer is, and she says like just speak as if you were speaking to a lover.
Mhm.
And, that's the way, speak in round words. But maybe these terms are not for everybody can be remembered. So maybe you want to speak a little bit into the world as a lover. What does that mean in its essence?
I mean, it's really a book title from Joanna Macy, which is a deep ecologist, woman, feminist, activist, etc. I very much admire her work, so it's drawing on that book title, World as a Lover, which really means this extended understanding of interconnectedness through the heart, basically, and that can be erotic. I have articles about the erotic self, yeah. So when we bring the heart connection together with our body, naturally it can become sexual also, but not in a sexualized way. That's kind of the big difference. So erotic in the widest understanding is exactly that I can feel interconnectedness through my body and can have a feeling of wonder, awe, beauty, ecstasy, yeah, even orgasmic in whatever way. That could be an understanding of world as a lover, to feel alive with all relations, with interconnectedness, and to enjoy that to a certain extent, that some people even describe as, full body orgasm or orgasm with nature, etc. But I always say it's very important to unlearn, at least for modern societies, sexualization versus sexuality. Sexualization, I'm in need for something. I want to make my partner or whoever uh, give me this or that, or vice versa. So it's usually a lot of intoxicated with manipulation that we learned as children. We can all trace it back, and in shamanic traditions, there are like teachings about what are like the three big shadows of humans in such a development, seen in such a development. The first would be manipulating through diseases, not feeling well, having pain, da 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 da, withdrawing, yeah, and saying no. Then the second would be any kind of value that we give, including finances, materialistic values, manipulation through that. And the third is sexuality. Yeah. So these are the three big demons that we have to master in our spiritual development. And I clearly see that in myself, in all the work that I do all these decades. And it's more like becoming more mature. And so I really love the shamanic traditions. They have kind of very simple but profound teachings. For example, such a level of integration I can only do for my adult self. I cannot do when I'm in regression and acting out like the little child. No? So it is very much becoming mature in a healthy way, taking responsibility as much as we can, and to act through the heart. And then naturally, sexuality is part of our life experience and part of our vital energy.
Yeah. So, in terms of self leadership and maturity, I feel that they're very interconnected in that. And how do you see the intersection of that maturity with, for example, bringing in ritual and the ritual work? Because you also have such a strong clinical background, but you also have such a strong background in shamanism. And how have you been able to bridge the two in your work?
I mean, it's really the metaphor of the sacred circle we can find in all intercultural shamanic traditions and the medicine wheel, yeah, the systems, the rhythms of nature, shamanic traditions that teach we need to at least take care about 7 generations backwards and forwards. For me, the crucial point is this: I can connect with certain research findings of neuroscience and neurobiology and neurophysiology, showing the impact backwards and forwards. Of course, we can only speculate and anticipate. Yeah, so it's like I feel like I'm really here to I'm always interested what are the overlaps actually. Of course there are differences, and culture have also especially different expressions, but if we boil it down it's not so different. So I feel I'm here to help boil down things that bring us together in core understandings, but these core understandings find new expression as we go along in the evolution. For example, I always cite also this kind of Indian mystical texts, yeah, speaking about, okay, how did humans in the end actually evolve? There was the fish in the ocean. The ocean was intoxicated. The fish asks themselves, okay, I die in the ocean, or I go on land, and I will die on land or not. Yeah, and then the butterfly emerged, and then the birds emerged, and then the humans emerged. We can spin that ahead. What will be, the next evolutionary step? We don't know. And I feel this is like probably the metaphor of birth, death. Um, there will be always we don't know, and we can only jump. And the fish who decides to stay in the sea, or the fish who goes on land, there's no right or wrong. There's only to take a leap, to jump from the mountain, and to say, okay, there's something is here that wants to evolve further, and that we don't know. And that would also relate to your question and your event topic of sacredness, that there is an understanding of like a motto of something of life itself that we call the mysteries of life, or the mystery of divine feminine and masculine, your sacred union, that we cannot even explain yet, but evolution life itself wants to find new expressions. Yeah.
What do you feel are the risks in this expansion that we're also in, and especially focusing on the psychedelic space? There is so much growth and so much good intentions, but like there is a lot of that. So what is it from your perspective that risk if we from what you have been seeing?
Yeah, I feel it's exactly that the danger for sure is that it gets like a quick fix. The people want it like a quick fix, or the road to enlightenment with one ceremony whatsoever. So for sure, of course, I come from such a place where I say we need to be able to hold both our pain and our ecstasy. Yeah, probably like that metaphor, two sides of a coin. And I feel this only can lead to a next evolution. And as long as we are in one side of the coin or the other side of the coin, whatever methods we choose, it doesn't really matter. Will not really make a difference. So basically, coming into this place of oneness, where through the heart, as humans, that naturally we care for all relations and to create a harmony versus exploiting everything as it happens now, also with psychedelics and of course plant medicine exploiting also, yeah, medicine. And yeah, so this, I feel what we need to look at is like how to bring these two sides of the coin into harmony and balance. Yeah.
Yeah. So, given the historical and cultural ties of psychedelics and sacred practices, how do you see that these sacred traditions are shaping the modern perspective on responsible use and stewardship in a way?
I mean, every scholar, when we read certain articles, also from much more let's say very scientific oriented colleagues, I mean, 1 plus 1 is two. It's like whoever studies ancient traditions will come to the point that, wow, this is very complex understanding. And why? So, shamanic traditions, there are only two teachers, nature. Why did they get such a complex understanding just living in nature and studying nature? And then, of course, the sun, the moon, the stars. And then there's this other teacher, the experience, which is then our own truth, and which also of course shapes our true self. And yeah, so I feel like it's not so difficult actually to make the connections. And scholars, I feel it's more like scholars being open to really look at the ancient wisdom and to say, yeah, I can trace it back and I can actually interrelate it with modern scientific findings. It's more like to have this open heart to bring bits and pieces together.
Yeah. Do you feel that in the three pillars that you named of re-sacralization, you had the body and then nature, and then of course the perspective of the ancestral healing and all of that work? How do you see, for example, because I know art is such an important aspect of your work as well. How does art come into this work and those kind the expression of it, because that is part of ritual as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, all my life, yeah, I work really a lot with nonverbal methods. Long before I started working with psychedelics, I'm trained in dance, psychodrama, and body movement, etc. So this is always like I feel I bring a strength from that to really to say, wait a minute, our verbal expression is so limited, it's so linear. Our experiences are non-linear. Psychedelic experiences non-linear. We need to find expression that is much more complex. So that's definitely it. And of course, art, but not limited to visual art, let's say, is always described in any world religion, in any shamanic tradition, as a vehicle that can help us to understand the complexity, the bigger picture of our lives, which often can have cathartic, ecstatic experiences, and in that way, very much comparable to psychedelics, I always say. And then on top of it, like cream on the ice cone, then I put psychedelics. So even then, we can go a step further. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of, for example, storytelling, which before we went online, we were talking about that and the importance of storytelling. What do you feel is really important to convey about storytelling maybe around stewardship for future generations as well.
Yeah, super. Thank you very much. So this is like also a key point in all my work, in my understanding. Like, I mean, storytelling, oral traditions in ancient wisdom traditions, of course. No written text because written text is too limited. So there needs to be oral teachings. Yeah. And now, even today, there are many shamanic traditions. There's only allowed oral tradition, yeah, oral teaching. And so narrative research, for example, has very powerful research findings showing exactly that. So the power of storytelling, the power of a narrative, yeah. And of course, the narrative, the story is much more complex than only linear expression. And so this is really the parable of sitting around a fire in the night sky and listening to the elders. And the narrative therapy, also really very powerful research on PTSD, very severe cases of veterans. Just working with narrative therapy have amazing results. Just to have also a witness for something very difficult. So in trauma therapy, narrative therapy or storytelling is a huge part of healing. And then on top of it, we can of course sit around the fire in ceremony with psychedelics. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And probably I
So,
just to give a
yeah.
feeling of that also what storytelling can mean, I can just give an example that recently happened in my life. I was invited to post-war Yugoslavia not long ago for a project that a few women leaders initiate healing in the Balkans after post-war Yugoslavia. And I was preparing very much for it. I'm very experienced with trauma work and extreme cases of disaster and trauma, etc. And then entering it to Sarajevo, yeah, Sarajevo in now Bosnia Herzegovina, and then we did a specific ritual. I wanted to get the feeling of the city, of the land, of the people, of the culture. And what was so amazing for me, I did not know in such a detail that Sarajevo is described as the city of love.
Mm.
And why? So before the war and historically for many, many hundreds of years, the world religions live under one umbrella. So they have 50% intercultural marriages between world religions. A lot of Muslim population is there, Christian, Orthodox, etc. And it is like a rather, let's say, a sophisticated spiritual cultural city, or was. And a hypothesis that I have that because it was completely destroyed in the war, and 20,000 children actually were killed. Yeah, so it's like huge. I mean, and one hypothesis is that they were kind of so sophisticated that it was such a power. They lived happily together, they lived in peace together, world religions, culture meet each other, very highly educated, and a city of art. So it's the city of culture, of arts, artists. And for me, that was very touching. And then we did a prayer pilgrimage in a mosque, in different cathedrals, etc. And then I did this work with these leadership women for this project Healing Balkan. And yeah, it was very intense, of course, yeah, to hold still very fresh, very extreme trauma. Of course, everybody there has PTSD. They all lived through the war. Some of them live still there and some migrated abroad. For me, it was very touching to hear that so many children were killed. I mean, there was, no ethical boundary anymore just to destroy Sarajevo. And then in the end of this project, on the last day, it was like after all this, holding all this, something fresh and new was emerging. And that was like, I have never experienced in such an intensity. It was on that next morning, I also, of course, guided integration processes. This next morning that I brought this metaphor to say like, but wait a minute, if you historically have this experience of being the city of love, Sarajevo, yeah, this cannot be destroyed. This is sacred. This is eternal. This is living on. And now in the time of healing and building peace and taking care of resources, it's time to reconnect with that power of love that your culture and that your geographical region really holds. And it was like a breakthrough experience for everybody, and really also for me. It was something clicked in me that I have that I taught for many times, but now something is different for me. Something is like these two sides of the coin are now one. I mean, I was really also very, very devastated by the trauma still present there, yeah, and people with PTSD, etc. And at the same time, connecting with this power of love of that region, it's one, it's inseparable, and this core, we could describe the sacredness, yeah, is in every cell of our body, and it lives on, it's passed on over generations. So that makes also the loop. Not only trauma is passed on, also our resilience, our resources are passed on. And for me at the moment, Sarajevo for me is like something totally clicked, even on a much deeper level.
Mm. Wow, what a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And maybe it's also a very an inspiration for those that are listening and watching, to really look at where geographically, where are you? You know,
Mm-hmm.
connect to the land. What are the qualities? What are the type of plants that are there? What is its history? And you know, it's almost like that sacredness cannot be gone. No, it's always there. It's a matter of you tuning into that relationship. Um, do you see that there is more of a maybe willingness or remembrance towards that kind of purpose of connecting to the sacred now because of you sharing the story and love being so present?
Um, I feel it's still a little bit like more like 50-50. I feel we didn't make it through yet to be on
Mm,
60-40. I feel we're still more or less dancing around 50-50. Um, like that we still fall back into the splitting. And then in good moments that we can hold, wow, this is both. And I want to heal my trauma, and I want to empower the resources that my Sarajevo brings, for example. Yeah. So I feel that's where we are at the brink, and now probably to discuss further into the future generations. I feel that's probably really also the task that the younger generations and even the unborn generations will have to face. To really bring it together, because I feel the danger of the younger generations, if they are very disconnected from extreme trauma, to say, I don't have a story with that, which is of course not true, and only wanting to go into the ecstasy part, that will not make the world a better place. So I feel the younger generation, I mean, I would say I'm a world child, so this is the incarnation that I have at this moment. The younger generations probably have the opposite task or challenge, um, to so much go into ecstasy and using catalyzers, psychedelics whatsoever, Aquarian age of times.
hmm
I think the shadow aspect will be to integrate the depth, the profound experience, existential experiences, and from both places develop further, not only from one side of the coin. And that's what we would call a spiritual bypass or psychedelic bypass, or yeah.
yeah. So in coming in towards the also the topic of us getting here together is also to lean into purpose, because one of the questions that has come up so many times in my own work with people and in the retreats we host is a question that comes up a lot. So what is my purpose? I want to lean into this expansion to know my purpose. How do you see, what do you feel is important to name about purpose and what it means? And yeah.
I feel like with all that I have said now and explained, I would like to still draw onto this a picture of I, for me it feels crucial that we have to understand our blockages, our defense mechanisms, and the more we can consciously transform them through our heart, that means also without judgment, yeah, the more naturally our self comes out. It's nothing that we need to
Mm.
search. It's nothing that we need to invent. It's there in every cell of our body, but it gets blocked out, blocked up with our defenses and then the manipulation techniques that we have learned. So
Yeah,
I always say, but wait a minute, there's nothing to search. It's only that it can evolve. The more you can peel the onion from, unconscious behaviors and unprocessed material, the more your core is there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it's about being.
Yeah.
The more you continue to work on that inner polarization and all of what you just named multiple times already, it's then you're much more in a place of harmony and being with coming forth the expressions of creativity and coming together. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the event that you birthed, envisioned, birthing an ancient future, was the intentionality. How, first of all, the intentionality in the event itself, on the day itself, like every single thing, even from the little gifts and where everything was placed, from the luscious food. It's like that intentionality and that care for to create beauty. But one of the aspects that really stood for me is not for you to create like this massive big reach, but to come in with the heart in community.
Mhm.
And that community aspect is so important. So I feel that that is something that you're also bridging, the work that you're doing and leading people in that kind of sitting in circle together.
Mhm.
So in terms of stewardship and moving into this new earth, and how do you see community being a part of that?
Yes, I mean, also this also really coming from trauma work, my strong emphasis on that. We always in trauma therapy, we always say trauma cannot heal alone. We can only heal together by supporting each other, by holding space for each other, holding the pain. Shared pain is so much better than pain alone. Yeah.
Mm,
So it's definitely coming from such an understanding, but I would really say all that I have said, my calling is like, let's say, intentional communities and intentional communities where such a process is becoming a natural process. As much as I look at my difficult experiences, I look how I can empower my gifts. And I do this together with others, that it's not so much anymore like a burden or something or even like therapy, but rather a natural process of human being. For example, I strongly have the feeling in several decades maybe already psychotherapy will be not anymore if it goes really well, but it's more like a natural part of development.
yeah, yeah. So we're almost coming to an end, and the time flies. But I would like to ask you: is there anything you feel is important to name or to share with the audience that we maybe haven't dropped into or haven't asked?
Probably just really more explicitly. I mean, with ancestors healing for me is really about the lineages, and it took me quite some years. Only in my more mature mid-age years, I was able to go to a much deeper place of understanding what lineage can mean, coming from a modern society, and especially for me, for example, coming from Germany, connecting with my ancestors was or is a life topic. Yeah. And then somehow somewhere there in my mid 40s it was like totally like dropping into a much deeper place of really, like, let's say, life rootedness, life belonging, and not only blood family, of course, metaphysical connectedness with all life. And I feel that this is the only medicine, is the lineage, but not limited to dogma, not limited to blood family only, but to understand that everything evolves from each other. I would not be here without my ancestors, etc. And I feel that's the real medicine. And then all the other medicines are just little aspects of it: music, dance, psychedelics, art, da 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 da, love, sexuality, partnership, is then only like stars of that big flower, which is the rootedness, the connectedness. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today with us and for giving us so many beautiful seeds of wisdom and yeah, and please follow Regina. There are some beautiful events coming up, also 2024 and beyond. So thank you, Regina, for
Thank you
being
very
here.
much, Natasha, and warm welcome to all the audiences that you will invite.
Mhm.